They ridiculed Justin for adopting two homeless black siblings, Samuel and Amelia. But years later, those same people are on their knees begging for their help. What drove the town to such desperation that made them swallow their pride? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Justin Davidson stood in the courthouse, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. At 42, he was about to become a father to two beautiful black babies, Amelia and Samuel, whom he found wandering the street. As the judge finalized the adoption, Justin felt a surge of love and protectiveness wash over him. "Congratulations, Mr. Davidson," the judge said with a smile. "You are now officially the father of these two children." Justin's eyes welled up with tears as he looked down at the sleeping infants in their carriers. "Thank you, Your Honor," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As he left the courthouse, Justin couldn't stop smiling. He carefully placed the carriers in his car and drove home, his mind filled with dreams of the future he would build with his new family. However, the joy of that moment was soon overshadowed by the harsh reality of small-town prejudice. As Justin walked down Main Street, pushing the double stroller with Amelia and Samuel nestled inside, he noticed the stares and whispers. Mrs. Johnson, the town gossip, didn't even try to hide her disapproval. "Well, I never," she muttered loudly as Justin passed by. What was he thinking, taking in those children? Justin felt a pang in his heart, but he kept his head high and continued walking. He knew that love was more important than the color of their skin, but it hurt to see how narrow-minded some people could be. At the grocery store, Justin carefully selected baby food and diapers while trying to ignore the judgmental looks from other shoppers. As he stood in line to check out, he overheard two women talking behind him. "It's just not natural," one of them said in a stage whisper. "Those poor babies won't know their real culture." Justin took a deep breath, reminding himself that their opinions didn't matter. What mattered was the love he had for Amelia and Samuel. As he tucked the babies into their cribs that night, Justin felt the weight of the town's judgment on his shoulders. But looking at the peaceful faces of his children, he knew he had made the right decision. Love knew no color, and he was determined to give Amelia and Samuel the best life possible, no matter what anyone else thought. As news of Justin's adoption spread through the small town, it became the center of gossip and heated discussions. Everywhere he went, Justin could feel the weight of curious and judgmental stares. Even his closest friends and family members weren't immune to the shock of his decision. One sunny afternoon, Justin's sister Amy came to visit. As they sat on the porch watching Amelia and Samuel play in the yard, Amy couldn't hold back her concerns any longer. "Justin," she began hesitantly, "are you sure you've thought this through? Raising black children in our town? It won't be easy." Justin turned to his sister, his eyes filled with determination. "I know it won't be easy, Amy, but love doesn't see color. These children deserve a loving home, and I'm going to give them that." Amy sighed, shaking her head. "I'm just worried about you and them. People here can be so closed-minded." Justin reached out and squeezed his sister's hand. "That's exactly why I need to do this, to show that love can overcome prejudice." At the local diner, Justin overheard whispers from the next booth. "Did you hear about Justin Davidson?" a woman's voice said. "He's gone and adopted two black babies. In this town. Can you imagine?" "Those poor children," another voice chimed in. "They'll never fit in here." Justin's heart ached, but he reminded himself that their opinions didn't matter. What mattered was the love he had for Amelia and Samuel. Even at church, a place that should have been accepting, Justin faced questions and doubts. After the Sunday service, Pastor Mike pulled him aside. "Justin, I admire your compassion," the pastor said, his brow furrowed with concern. "But have you considered the challenges these children will face growing up here? It might be kinder to find them a home in a more diverse community." Justin stood tall, his voice steady as he replied, "Pastor, I believe that love can change hearts and minds. Amelia and Samuel are my children now, and this is their home. We'll face whatever challenges come our way together, as a family." Despite the constant barrage of opinions and well-meaning advice, Justin remained unwavering in his commitment. Every night, as he tucked Amelia and Samuel into bed, he whispered the same promise. "I'll always love you no matter what anyone else says or thinks. We're a family, and nothing will ever change that." Justin's heart swelled with joy as he carried Amelia and Samuel into their new home. The house, once quiet and empty, now buzzed with the energy of new life. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, turning the spare rooms into cozy nurseries filled with soft colors and stuffed animals. "Welcome home, little ones," Justin whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He gently placed each child in their crib, marveling at their tiny fingers and peaceful expressions. As the days passed, Justin settled into his new role as a father. He learned to change diapers, prepare bottles, and soothe crying babies in the middle of the night. Despite the exhaustion, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment he had never known before. One sunny morning, Justin decided it was time for their first family outing to the grocery store. He carefully strapped Amelia and Samuel into their double stroller, his heart light with excitement. As they entered the store, Justin immediately noticed the change in atmosphere. The usual friendly chatter died down, replaced by a tense silence. He could feel eyes following them as he pushed the stroller down the aisles. "Did you see that?" a woman whispered to her friend, not quite quietly enough. "Those babies can't be his." Justin's cheeks burned, but he kept his head high, focusing on his shopping list and his children's needs. At the produce section, an elderly man shook his head disapprovingly. "What's this town coming to?" he muttered, loud enough for Justin to hear. Justin's hands trembled slightly as he picked out some apples, but he took a deep breath and reminded himself of his love for Amelia and Samuel. As they approached the checkout, the cashier's eyes widened in surprise. She looked from Justin to the babies and back again, her discomfort evident. "These are my children," Justin said firmly but kindly, before she could ask. "Amelia and Samuel." The cashier nodded awkwardly and began scanning the items. On the way home, Justin's mind raced with worries about the future. How would he protect Amelia and Samuel from the judgment and prejudice they would face? But as he looked at their innocent faces in the rearview mirror, he felt a surge of determination. "We might face some tough times," he said softly to his sleeping children, "but I promise to teach you how to be strong and loving, no matter what anyone says or thinks. We're in this together, always." As the months passed, Justin watched with wonder as Amelia and Samuel grew from tiny infants into curious toddlers. Their first words, first steps, and first giggles filled the house with joy and laughter. Justin's heart swelled with pride at each new milestone. "Look at you go," he cheered as Amelia took her wobbly first steps across the living room. Samuel, not to be outdone, pulled himself up on the coffee table, determined to follow his sister. Justin's days were filled with reading stories, playing peekaboo, and singing nursery rhymes. He reveled in these simple moments, savoring the unconditional love that flowed between him and his children. However, the outside world wasn't always as warm and welcoming. Justin decided to join a local parenting group, hoping to connect with other parents and give Amelia and Samuel a chance to socialize. But as he walked into the community center with his toddlers in tow, he felt the familiar chill of judgment. The other parents smiled politely, but their eyes held questions and assumptions. Conversations would halt abruptly when Justin approached, only to resume in hushed tones once he passed. "Hi there," Justin said warmly to a mother sitting nearby. "I'm Justin, and these are Amelia and Samuel." The woman nodded stiffly. "Hello," she replied, before turning away to fuss over her own child. Justin's smile faltered, but he took a deep breath and focused on Amelia and Samuel, who were happily exploring the toy corner. He joined them on the floor, helping them build a tower with colorful blocks. "That's it, sweetie," he encouraged Samuel, who was carefully placing a red block on top. "You're doing great." Amelia clapped her hands in delight as the tower grew taller. Justin's heart filled with love, pushing away the sting of rejection from the other parents. Despite the coldness he felt from others, Justin remained determined to give Amelia and Samuel the best childhood possible. He poured his energy into creating a loving, nurturing home environment. As Amelia and Samuel reached school age, Justin felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. He knew this milestone would bring new challenges, but he hoped the children would find friendship and acceptance among their peers. On the first day of school, Justin walked Amelia and Samuel to their classroom, his heart swelling with pride as they bravely faced this new adventure. "You two are going to do great," he assured them, giving each a tight hug before they joined their classmates. However, as the days passed, Justin noticed a change in Amelia's usually cheerful demeanor. One afternoon, she came home with tears streaming down her face, her small shoulders shaking with sobs. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Justin asked, kneeling down to her level and wrapping her in a comforting embrace. "Nobody wants to play with me," Amelia choked out between sobs. "Mia's mom said she can't come to my birthday party because we're different." Justin's heart broke as he held his daughter close. Samuel, sensing his sister's distress, came over and put his small hand on her back. "Come here, both of you," Justin said softly, guiding them to the couch. He sat down, pulling Amelia and Samuel onto his lap. "I need you to listen carefully, okay?" The children nodded, their eyes wide and trusting. "Sometimes," Justin began, choosing his words carefully, "people are afraid of things they don't understand, and sometimes that fear makes them do unkind things." He gently wiped away Amelia's tears. "But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. You are both so special and wonderful, and I love you more than anything in this world." "But why don't they like us?" Samuel asked, his voice small and confused. Justin took a deep breath. "Some people might judge you because your skin is a different color than theirs. But that's their problem, not yours. Your color is beautiful, and it's part of what makes you unique." He hugged them tighter. "Remember, we're a family. We love each other no matter what. And there are many good people out there who will love you for who you are, just like I do." The evening of the school's annual parent-teacher night arrived, and Justin took a deep breath as he parked his car in the crowded lot. He knew the challenges that lay ahead, but his love for Amelia and Samuel gave him strength. As Justin walked into the school, he felt the weight of curious glances and hushed whispers. He held his head high, reminding himself that he was here for his children. In Amelia's classroom, her teacher, Mrs. Thompson, greeted Justin with a warm smile. "Mr. Davidson, it's wonderful to see you," she said, gesturing for him to take a seat. "Amelia is such a bright young girl," Mrs. Thompson began. "She's always eager to learn and has a real talent for math." Justin beamed with pride, his heart swelling at the praise for his daughter. As Mrs. Thompson continued to share Amelia's achievements, he couldn't help but notice the sidelong glances from other parents in the room. Moving on to Samuel's classroom, Justin experienced a similar mix of emotions. Mr. Roberts, Samuel's teacher, spoke highly of his son's writing skills and kind nature. "Samuel has a way with words that's quite remarkable for his age," Mr. Roberts explained, "and he's always the first to help a classmate in need." Throughout the evening, Justin felt a conflicting surge of joy and discomfort. While his children's accomplishments filled him with happiness, the cold stares and whispered comments from other parents lingered like a heavy cloud. As the night came to a close, Justin made his way back to his car. Sitting behind the wheel, he took a moment to reflect on the evening. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but the glowing reports from Amelia and Samuel's teachers reinforced his belief in his children's potential. Justin started the car, his resolve stronger than ever. Despite the judgment they faced, he knew that with love, support, and guidance, Amelia and Samuel could overcome any obstacle. As he drove home, Justin's commitment to his children burned brighter than ever, fueled by the pride he felt in their achievements and the love that bound their family together. As the years passed, Amelia and Samuel grew from curious toddlers into bright, inquisitive children. Their laughter filled Justin's home, bringing joy to his life despite the challenges they faced as a family. The town, however, remained slow to change. Justin noticed a gradual shift in their treatment. Invitations to community events became scarce, and friendly waves from neighbors grew less frequent. At first, he tried to brush it off, hoping it was just his imagination. But as time went on, the exclusion became more apparent. One sunny Saturday morning, Justin sat at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee and reading the local newspaper. His eyes fell on an advertisement for the annual town picnic, an event they had attended every year since the children were babies. This year, no invitation had arrived in their mailbox. Amelia, now 10 years old, bounded into the kitchen, her curly hair bouncing with each step. "Dad, when's the town picnic? Can we go this year?" Justin's heart sank. He set down his coffee mug and gestured for Amelia to sit beside him. "Sweetheart, I don't think we'll be going this year," he said gently. Amelia's face fell. "But why? We always go." Samuel, hearing the conversation, joined them at the table. At 12, he was becoming more aware of the subtle ways their family was treated differently. Justin took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes, people have a hard time accepting families that look different from their own," he explained. "But that doesn't make our family any less special or important." He reached out, taking one of each child's hands in his own. "What matters most is the love we have for each other. That's what makes us strong." Samuel nodded, his young face serious. "Is that why some kids at school don't want to play with us?" Justin's heart ached at the question, but he saw an opportunity to impart an important lesson. "Yes, son, but remember, their actions say more about them than about us. We can't control how others treat us, but we can control how we respond." As the years passed, Amelia's compassionate nature blossomed into a keen interest in medicine. At the age of 12, she often found herself tending to injured animals in their backyard. One sunny afternoon, Justin watched from the kitchen window as Amelia carefully bandaged a bird's broken wing. "Dad!" Amelia called out excitedly. "Come look! I think I fixed it!" Justin stepped outside, a warm smile spreading across his face. He knelt beside his daughter, examining her handiwork. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. You did a great job." Amelia beamed with pride. "Do you think I could be a doctor someday, Dad?" Justin placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Amelia, you can be anything you set your mind to. If you want to be a doctor, I know you'll be an amazing one." Later that evening, Justin found Amelia curled up on the couch, her nose buried in a thick book about human anatomy. He couldn't help but feel a surge of pride at her dedication. Meanwhile, Samuel was developing a strong sense of justice. At 14, he often peppered Justin with questions about fairness and equality. One day, as they walked home from the grocery store, Samuel noticed a homeless man being shooed away from a storefront. "Dad, why did that store owner treat that man so badly?" Samuel asked, his brow furrowed in concern. Justin sighed, searching for the right words. "Sometimes people judge others without knowing their story, Samuel. It's not right, but it happens." Samuel's eyes flashed with determination. "But it's not fair. Someone should do something about it." Justin nodded, recognizing the passion in his son's voice. "You're right, son, and maybe someday you could be that someone." As they continued their walk home, Samuel bombarded Justin with more questions about justice and equality. Justin answered each one patiently, nurturing his son's growing interest in making the world a fairer place. That night, as Justin tucked his children into bed, he felt a deep sense of pride. Amelia, with her medical books scattered around her room, and Samuel, with his thoughtful questions about justice, were growing into remarkable young people. Despite the challenges they faced, Justin knew that their compassion and determination would carry them far. As winter settled over the small town, a nasty flu outbreak swept through the community. Families found themselves bedridden, struggling to care for one another as the illness spread rapidly. Despite the years of ridicule and isolation, Justin couldn't stand by and watch his neighbors suffer. One chilly morning, Justin bundled up Amelia and Samuel, now teenagers, and loaded his car with homemade soup, over-the-counter medicines, and other essentials. They drove to the home of the Johnsons, a family that had been particularly cold to them over the years. Justin knocked on the door, his heart pounding. Mrs. Johnson answered, her face pale and drawn. She blinked in surprise at the sight of Justin and his children. "We heard you were all sick," Justin said softly. "We brought some supplies to help." Mrs. Johnson hesitated, confusion evident in her tired eyes. After a moment, she stepped aside, allowing them to enter. Inside, Justin and his children got to work. Amelia, drawing on her medical knowledge, helped check temperatures and administer medicine. Samuel organized the supplies and made sure everyone had what they needed. Justin heated up the soup and tidied the house. As they worked, Mr. Johnson watched from the couch, his expression a mix of gratitude and shame. "Why are you doing this?" he asked Justin quietly. "After how we've treated you all these years." Justin paused, considering his words carefully. "Because it's the right thing to do," he replied simply. "We're all part of this community, regardless of our differences." Word of Justin's kindness spread through the town. Some families, desperate for help, swallowed their pride and accepted his assistance. Justin, Amelia, and Samuel spent days moving from house to house, offering aid wherever it was needed. As the flu outbreak began to subside, a subtle shift occurred in the town's atmosphere. People who had once crossed the street to avoid Justin now offered hesitant nods of acknowledgement. At the grocery store, a few townspeople even struck up brief conversations with him. As Amelia and Samuel entered their teenage years, the subtle prejudices they had experienced throughout their lives became more apparent. One evening, after a particularly trying day at school, the siblings sat at the kitchen table, their faces etched with worry and confusion. Amelia, now 15, looked up at Justin as he prepared dinner. "Dad," she said hesitantly, "why do some people in town still treat us differently?" Samuel, 2 years younger, chimed in, "Yeah, it's like they're afraid of us or something." Justin paused, setting down the wooden spoon he'd been using to stir the pasta sauce. He took a deep breath and joined his children at the table, his eyes filled with love and concern. "Kids," he began gently, "the world isn't always fair or kind. Some people judge others based on how they look, without taking the time to know who they really are inside." Amelia's brow furrowed. "But that's not right, we haven't done anything wrong." "You're absolutely right, sweetheart," Justin agreed. "It's not fair and it's not your fault. People sometimes fear what they don't understand, and that fear can turn into prejudice." Samuel leaned forward, his eyes intense. "So why don't we just hate them back?" Justin shook his head softly. "That's not the answer, Sam. Hate only breeds more hate. Instead, we need to show empathy, even to those who may not deserve it." "Empathy?" Amelia questioned. "It means trying to understand how others feel, even if we don't agree with them," Justin explained. "When we show empathy, we open the door to change." The kitchen fell silent for a moment as the siblings absorbed their father's words. "But Dad," Samuel said, his voice barely above a whisper, "doesn't it hurt you when they treat us badly?" Justin's eyes welled with tears. "Of course it does. It breaks my heart to see you both face these challenges. But I want you to know that love is stronger than any prejudice. The love we have for each other, that's what matters most." He reached out, taking one of each of their hands in his. "I need you both to remember something important. Forgiveness isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about freeing yourself from anger and bitterness. When we forgive, we show strength, not weakness." Amelia squeezed her father's hand. "Like when you helped during the flu outbreak, even though people had been mean to us?" Justin nodded, smiling proudly. "Exactly. We rise above hate by showing kindness and compassion, even when it's hard." As they sat there, hands clasped together, a new understanding passed between them. The conversation marked a turning point for the Davidson family, strengthening their bond and deepening their resolve to face the world's challenges together. As the years passed, Amelia and Samuel grew into accomplished young adults, each pursuing their dreams with the unwavering support of their father, Justin. Amelia, now in her early 20s, had set her sights on medical school, inspired by her childhood passion for healing and her desire to make a difference in people's lives. Samuel, 2 years her junior, had chosen to follow a path in law, driven by his strong sense of justice and the need to fight for equality. The day Amelia received her acceptance letter to medical school was one of pure joy in the Davidson household. Justin's eyes brimmed with tears of pride as he hugged his daughter tightly. "You did it, sweetheart," he whispered. "I always knew you could." Samuel whooped with excitement, lifting his sister off her feet in a bear hug. "Dr. Amelia Davidson," he said, grinning. "Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" As news of Amelia's acceptance spread through the small town, reactions were mixed. Some neighbors offered grudging congratulations, while others whispered behind closed doors, wondering how that girl could have achieved such success. A few months later, it was Samuel's turn to celebrate as he received his own acceptance letter to law school. Justin gathered his children close, his heart swelling with pride. "You both have worked so hard," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't be more proud of the people you've become." Despite the siblings' achievements, the town's old prejudices lingered. At the local diner, hushed conversations could be overheard. "I don't understand how those children could get into such good schools," one elderly patron muttered. "Must be some kind of quota system." But Amelia and Samuel refused to let such comments deter them. They focused on their goals, drawing strength from the love and guidance Justin had given them throughout their lives. They knew that their success was not just their own, but a testament to their father's unwavering support and the values he had instilled in them. As they prepared to leave for their respective schools, Amelia and Samuel sat with Justin on the porch of their childhood home. The air was thick with nostalgia and anticipation for the future. "Dad," Amelia said softly, "we wouldn't be here without you. Everything we've achieved, it's because of your love and support." Amelia's dedication to her studies paid off as she excelled in medical school. Her sharp mind and caring nature made her stand out among her peers, and soon she found herself at the top of her class. Her professors praised her work ethic and her ability to connect with patients during simulations. As her first hospital rotation approached, Amelia felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She knew returning to her hometown hospital might bring challenges, but she was determined to face them with grace and professionalism. On her first day, Amelia walked into the hospital with her head held high, her white coat crisp and new. She took a deep breath, remembering her father's words. "Always lead with kindness, no matter what." It didn't take long for word to spread that Justin Davidson's adopted daughter was now a medical student at the hospital. Some staff members whispered and stared, their old prejudices bubbling to the surface. Amelia's first patient was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman she recognized from town. As Amelia entered the room, Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened with recognition. "You're Justin Davidson's girl, aren't you?" Mrs. Thompson said, her tone cool and distant. Amelia smiled warmly, pushing aside the sting of the woman's tone. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Amelia Davidson. I'll be assisting with your care today. How are you feeling?" Mrs. Thompson's replies were curt, but Amelia remained patient and compassionate. She carefully explained the treatment plan, answered questions, and made sure Mrs. Thompson was comfortable. As the days passed, Amelia encountered more patients who recognized her. Some were openly hostile, refusing to make eye contact or speaking to her curtly. Others were simply distant, their discomfort evident in their body language. But Amelia never wavered. She treated each patient with the same level of care and respect, regardless of their attitude towards her. She remembered her father's lessons about empathy and forgiveness, using them to guide her interactions. As Samuel stepped into the gleaming offices of Hartman and Associates, he felt a mix of excitement and determination. The prestigious law firm had offered him a coveted internship, and he was ready to make the most of it. His sharp mind and passion for justice had earned him this opportunity, and he was eager to learn and grow. From the very first day, Samuel found himself immersed in a world of complex legal cases. He pored over documents, assisted in research, and sat in on meetings with clients. But it wasn't long before he noticed a troubling pattern. Many of the firm's pro bono cases involved people from marginalized communities who had faced discrimination. As Samuel delved deeper into these cases, he felt a familiar ache in his heart. He remembered the cold stares and whispered comments he and Amelia had endured growing up. He thought of Justin, who had fought tirelessly to give them a loving home despite the town's judgment. One day, Samuel was asked to help with a case involving a young immigrant family facing unfair eviction. As he listened to their story, He saw the same fear and helplessness in their eyes that he had once seen in his own reflection. It stirred something deep within him. "We'll do everything we can to help you," Samuel assured them, his voice filled with conviction. "Everyone deserves a fair chance." As he worked on the case, Samuel's passion for justice grew stronger. He stayed late at the office, poring over legal precedents and crafting arguments. His dedication caught the eye of the senior partners, who began to take notice of the young intern's drive and skill. With each passing day, Samuel's resolve deepened. He saw how the law could be a powerful tool for change, a way to give voice to those who had been silenced. He thought of Justin, who had given him and Amelia a voice when the world tried to ignore them. "This is why I'm here," Samuel thought to himself one evening as he prepared for a crucial hearing. "To fight for those who can't fight for themselves, just like Dad fought for us." As the years passed, Amelia's dedication to her medical studies paid off. She graduated at the top of her class and returned to her hometown to begin her residency at the local hospital. The same halls that had once echoed with whispers about her now buzzed with anticipation of the promising young doctor's arrival. Amelia's first few months were challenging. Some of her colleagues and patients still harbored doubts about her abilities, their prejudices lingering beneath the surface. But Amelia remained focused, treating each patient with the same compassion and skill her father had taught her. It wasn't long before Amelia's talent began to shine through. She successfully diagnosed a rare condition that had puzzled other doctors for months, bringing relief to a family that had almost lost hope. Word of her skill spread quickly through the small town. As more complex cases came her way, Amelia tackled each one with determination and expertise. She spent long hours researching and consulting with specialists, always putting her patients first. Her dedication paid off when she successfully performed a risky surgery that saved a young child's life. The town began to take notice. People who had once crossed the street to avoid Justin and his children now sought out Dr. Amelia Davidson for their medical needs. The waiting room filled with faces both familiar and new, all eager to be treated by the doctor everyone was talking about. Despite her growing reputation, Amelia remained humble. She never sought praise or recognition for her work, focusing instead on the well-being of her patients. When faced with those who had doubted her in the past, she treated them with the same kindness and professionalism she showed everyone else. One day, as Amelia was leaving the hospital after a long shift, she overheard two nurses talking. "Can you believe Dr. Davidson saved another life today?" one said. "And to think, we all wondered if she'd amount to anything when her father first brought her here." Amelia paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. She thought of her father, of all the love and support he had given her and Samuel over the years. A small smile played on her lips as she continued walking, her mind already on the patients she would see tomorrow. Samuel had always been drawn to justice, and now as a practicing lawyer, he found himself facing the very prejudices he had grown up with. When a local family, the Johnsons, came to him with their story of wrongful eviction, Samuel knew he had to take the case. The Johnsons, a mixed-race couple with 2 young children, had been living in their rented home for 5 years without issue. But when a new landlord took over, they suddenly found themselves served with an eviction notice, despite always paying their rent on time. As Samuel dug deeper into the case, he uncovered a pattern of discrimination. The new landlord had been systematically pushing out families of color, replacing them with white tenants. It was a stark reminder of the injustice that still lurked beneath the surface of their small town. The day of the court hearing arrived, and Samuel felt the weight of expectation on his shoulders. He knew that many in the town still saw him as Justin Davidson's adopted son, rather than a capable lawyer. But as he stood before the judge, Samuel's voice rang out clear and strong. "Your Honor," Samuel began, his eyes filled with determination. "This case is about more than just one family's home. It's about the very fabric of our community and the values we claim to uphold." As Samuel presented his argument, laying out the evidence of discrimination and the impact on the Johnson family, he could feel the courtroom hanging on his every word. Even those who had doubted him seemed to be listening intently. The judge, an older man who had lived in the town his entire life, leaned forward in his chair, his brow furrowed in concentration. When Samuel finished his closing statement, a hush fell over the courtroom. After what felt like an eternity, the judge cleared his throat. "In light of the evidence presented," he said, "I find in favor of the Johnson family. The eviction notice is hereby nullified, and they are to be allowed to remain in their home." A collective gasp went through the courtroom, followed by the sound of the Johnson family's relieved sobs. Samuel turned to them, a small smile on his face as he shook Mr. Johnson's hand. As they left the courthouse, Samuel could feel the eyes of the town on him. Some looked at him with newfound respect, while others still seemed skeptical. But for Samuel, the only thing that mattered was that justice had been served. As Amelia and Samuel continued to make waves in their respective fields, the small town that had once scorned them began to take notice. Whispers started to circulate about the Davidson siblings' remarkable achievements. At the local diner, Mrs. Thompson, who had always been one of the most vocal critics of Justin's decision to adopt, sat with her friends over coffee. "Did you hear about Dr. Amelia Davidson's latest surgery?" she asked, her voice a mix of awe and disbelief. "They're saying she saved a man's life when no one else could." Her friend Sarah nodded. "And what about Samuel? I heard he just won another big case in the city. It's hard to believe those are the same kids we used to see at the playground." The conversation at their table grew quiet as they all remembered how they had treated the Davidson family over the years. The cold stares, the whispered comments, the deliberate exclusion. It all seemed so petty now in light of Amelia and Samuel's success. Across town, at the hardware store, similar conversations were taking place. Mr. Jenkins, the owner, found himself defending the Davidsons to some of his older customers. "You know, those kids have really made something of themselves," he said. "Maybe we were too quick to judge." Some townspeople remained baffled by the turn of events. How could the children they had ridiculed and ostracized grow up to be so accomplished? It challenged their long-held beliefs and prejudices, leaving them struggling to reconcile their past actions with the present reality. Others, however, began to feel the first stirrings of regret. They remembered the countless times they had turned their backs on Justin and his children, the birthday parties they hadn't invited them to, the community events where they had made the family feel unwelcome. As news of Amelia and Samuel's latest achievements spread, more and more people found themselves reassessing their past behavior. The success of the Davidson siblings served as a powerful reminder that love, determination, and good parenting could overcome even the most deeply entrenched prejudices. Amelia's pager buzzed as she finished her rounds at the hospital. She glanced at the screen and saw an urgent message. "Mr. Wilkins, room 302, critical condition." Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the name. Mr. Wilkins had been one of the town's most vocal critics of her family, often leading the charge in excluding them from community events. Taking a deep breath, Amelia steeled herself and headed to room 302. As she entered, she saw Mr. Wilkins lying in the hospital bed, looking pale and frail. His eyes widened with recognition as she approached. "Dr. Davidson," he said weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect to see you here." Amelia smiled gently, her professional demeanor masking any inner turmoil. "I'm here to help, Mr. Wilkins. How are you feeling?" Mr. Wilkins coughed, his body shaking with the effort. "Not good, Doc. I think I'm dying." Amelia checked his vitals and reviewed his chart. The situation was indeed serious, but she knew there was still hope. As she explained the treatment options, Mr. Wilkins suddenly reached out and grasped her hand. "Please," he begged, tears welling up in his eyes. "Please help me. I know I don't deserve it after how I treated you and your family, but please. I'm scared." Amelia felt a lump form in her throat, but she squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Mr. Wilkins, my job is to help everyone regardless of our past. I promise you I'll do everything in my power to help you get better." As Amelia began treating Mr. Wilkins, she noticed a change in his demeanor. The fear in his eyes was gradually replaced by something else, a mix of gratitude and shame. Between treatments, he would watch her work, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said one day, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "I never thought I'd say this, but I was wrong about you, Dr. Davidson, about your whole family." Samuel's dedication to justice had always been unwavering, but even he couldn't have predicted the impact his latest case would have. It all started when he took on a complex discrimination lawsuit involving wrongful evictions in a nearby town. The case was challenging, with powerful interests aligned against the victims, but Samuel was determined to fight for what was right. As the trial progressed, Samuel's brilliant legal mind and passionate arguments caught the attention of legal experts across the country. His innovative approach to the case set a new precedent in discrimination law, making headlines in national newspapers and legal journals. Word of Samuel's success spread quickly, and soon the very town that had once shunned him was knocking on his door. The mayor, looking sheepish and desperate, approached Samuel one afternoon. "Mr. Davidson," the mayor said, his voice tinged with both respect and embarrassment. "We need your help. Our town is facing a similar lawsuit, and we believe you're the only one who can win this for us." Samuel was taken aback. He remembered all too well the cold stares and whispered comments he had endured growing up in this town. But as he looked at the mayor's pleading face, he heard his father Justin's words echoing in his mind. Love and forgiveness can change hearts. With a deep breath, Samuel nodded. "I'll take the case," he said firmly. As Samuel worked tirelessly on the town's defense, something remarkable began to happen. People who had once crossed the street to avoid him now stopped to shake his hand. Former classmates who had excluded him from parties now invited him to community events. One day, as Samuel was leaving the courthouse, Mrs. Harrison, one of his harshest critics during his childhood, approached him with tears in her eyes. "Samuel," she said, her voice choked with emotion, I was wrong about you, about your whole family, the way you're helping our town now, after everything. You're a true hero." Samuel felt a mix of emotions wash over him: pride, vindication, and a touch of sadness for the years of struggle. But mostly, he felt hope. Hope that hearts could indeed change, just as his father had always believed. Justin sat on the porch of his modest home, a warm cup of coffee in his hands as he watched the sun rise over the small town he'd called home for so long. His eyes crinkled at the corners, not just from the bright morning light but from the smile that seemed to be a permanent fixture on his face these days. He thought back to the day he'd brought Amelia and Samuel home, two tiny bundles that had changed his life forever. The memory of those first few years was bittersweet, filled with the joy of watching his children grow, but tainted by the cruel words and cold stares of his neighbors. "You're making a mistake," they'd said. "Those children don't belong here." Justin's grip tightened on his mug as he remembered the loneliness, the isolation. There were days when the weight of it all had felt crushing, when he'd questioned if he was strong enough to give Amelia and Samuel the life they deserved. But then he'd look at their smiling faces, hear their laughter, and know in his heart that he'd made the right choice. Every sacrifice, every harsh word endured, had been worth it. Now, as he saw Amelia saving lives at the hospital and Samuel fighting for justice in the courtroom, Justin felt a warmth in his chest that no amount of coffee could match. His children weren't just surviving in a world that had once been so unwelcoming. They were thriving, changing it for the better. A tear slipped down Justin's cheek as he remembered all the milestones: first steps, first days of school, graduations. He'd been there for everyone, cheering them on, even when no one else would. "I'm so proud of you both," he whispered to the morning air, his voice thick with emotion. "So very proud." One summer evening, Amelia and Samuel walked side by side into the town's annual summer festival. The warm evening air was filled with the scent of popcorn and the sound of laughter. For a moment, they both hesitated, memories of past events where they'd felt unwelcome flooding back. "You okay?" Samuel asked, squeezing his sister's hand. Amelia nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." As they made their way through the crowd, something felt different. Instead of the usual whispers and sideways glances, people were smiling at them. Some even waved. "Dr. Davidson," called Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman Amelia had treated recently. "So good to see you, dear. How are you?" Amelia's eyes widened in surprise. "I'm well, Mrs. Thompson. How's your hip feeling?" Much better, thanks to you, the old woman beamed. As they continued walking, Samuel noticed a group of his former classmates. He braced himself for the usual cold shoulder, but instead they waved him over. "Hey Sam, heard about that big case you won, that was awesome, man," one of them said, clapping him on the back. The siblings exchanged bewildered glances. This was new territory for them. Throughout the evening, more and more people approached them. Some praised Amelia's work at the hospital, while others congratulated Samuel on his recent legal victories. The warmth and respect in their voices were unmistakable. Yet beneath the newfound admiration, there was a current of confusion. Many townspeople couldn't quite reconcile the successful adults before them with the children they had once shunned. "I just don't get it," Amelia overheard one woman say to another. "After everything this town put them through, why do they still help us?" Samuel was met with similar questions. "You could have gone to any big city law firm, Mr. Johnson," the town banker said. "Why stay here and help people who, well, you know." The siblings shared a knowing look. They both knew the answer, but it wasn't something easily explained to those who hadn't experienced their father's unwavering love and guidance. As the night wore on, it became clear that something had shifted in the town's perception of the Davidson family. The respect and admiration, though new and somewhat awkward, were genuine. And while confusion lingered about their continued dedication to the community, it was clear that the seeds of change were beginning to take root. As the summer days stretched on, Mr. Wilkins found himself on the mend, his recovery progressing steadily under Amelia's expert care. The day finally came when he was cleared to leave the hospital, and he requested a private meeting with Dr. Davidson before his discharge. Amelia entered Mr. Wilkins' room, her white coat crisp and her smile warm. "Good morning, Mr. Wilkins. How are you feeling today?" The older man sat up straighter in his bed, his eyes clear and bright. "Much better, thanks to you, Dr. Davidson." Amelia nodded, pleased with his progress. "I'm glad to hear it. You've made remarkable strides in your recovery." Mr. Wilkins cleared his throat, his hands fidgeting with the edge of his blanket. "Dr. Davidson, Amelia, I need to say something." Amelia tilted her head, curiosity flickering across her face. "Of course, Mr. Wilkins. What is it?" I want to thank you," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just for saving my life, but for showing me kindness I didn't deserve." Amelia's brow furrowed slightly, but she remained silent, allowing Mr. Wilkins to continue. "I judged you and your family unfairly for years," he admitted, his eyes downcast. "I was one of those who whispered behind your father's back when he adopted you and your brother. I was wrong." Tears welled up in Mr. Wilkins' eyes as he looked up at Amelia. "You could have treated me coldly given our history, but you didn't. You cared for me with such compassion and skill. It made me see your whole family, for who you truly are." Amelia's heart swelled with emotion, but she maintained her professional composure. "And who are we, Mr. Wilkins?" she asked softly. "Kind-hearted, resilient, and selfless," he replied without hesitation. "You've shown this town what true strength and character look like. I'm ashamed it took me so long to see it." The following week, Samuel stood before the courthouse steps, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and relief. The crowd that had gathered outside erupted into cheers as he emerged, flanked by the group of workers he had just successfully defended. Their faces, once etched with worry, now beamed with joy and gratitude. "We won!" Samuel announced, his voice carrying across the square. "Justice has been served for these hard-working individuals who were wrongfully terminated." The crowd's cheers grew louder. Among them were familiar faces from the town, people who had once looked at Samuel with suspicion, but now gazed at him with admiration and respect. One of the workers, an older man named Joe, stepped forward. His eyes glistened with tears as he grasped Samuel's hand. "Thank you, Mr. Davidson. You've given us back our dignity, our livelihoods. We can't thank you enough." Samuel smiled warmly, remembering his father's words about fighting for those who couldn't defend themselves. "It was my honor to stand with you," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. As the crowd dispersed, Samuel noticed a group of town officials approaching. Mayor Rodriguez, a man who had once been cold towards the Davidson family, now wore a look of genuine respect. "Samuel," the mayor began, "I want to congratulate you on this victory. Your dedication to justice and your ability to stand up for what's right. Well, it's exactly what this town needs." Samuel nodded, surprised by the mayor's words. "Thank you, sir. I'm just doing what I believe is right. And that's why we'd like to offer you a position on the town's ethics committee," Mayor Rodriguez continued. "We need someone with your passion for justice to help guide our community forward." As word of Samuel's victory and the mayor's offer spread through the town, people began to see him in a new light. He wasn't just Justin Davidson's adopted son anymore. He was Samuel Davidson, a key figure in their community's fight for justice. As Amelia's reputation as a skilled and compassionate doctor grew, her patient list began to swell. People who had once crossed the street to avoid her now found themselves in her waiting room, seeking her expertise. The change wasn't lost on Amelia, but she never let it affect her dedication to healing. One afternoon, Mrs. Larson, a woman who had been particularly vocal about her distrust of the Davidson family years ago, nervously entered Amelia's office. Her hands trembled as she sat down, avoiding eye contact. "Dr. Davidson," she began hesitantly, I know I haven't been kind to you or your family in the past, but I've heard how good you are, and I really need help." Amelia's warm brown eyes met Mrs. Larson's, and she offered a gentle smile. "Mrs. Larson, what matters is that you're here now. How can I help you?" Relief washed over Mrs. Larson's face as Amelia listened intently to her concerns, asking thoughtful questions and offering reassurance. As the appointment drew to a close, Mrs. Larson's eyes welled with tears. "Dr. Davidson, I don't know how you can be so kind to me after everything." Amelia reached out and patted Mrs. Larson's hand. "We're all human, Mrs. Larson. What's important is that we learn and grow. Now let's focus on getting you better." As word spread of Amelia's exceptional care, more former critics found their way to her office. Each time, Amelia met them with the same warmth and professionalism she showed all her patients. She never brought up past hurts or sought apologies. Instead, she focused on what she did best: healing. In quiet moments between patients, Amelia would sometimes reflect on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the pain of exclusion, the whispers, and the cold stares. But instead of bitterness, she felt a sense of peace. Her father's lessons in forgiveness and compassion had taken root deep within her, shaping her into the doctor and person she had become. After a month, the town hall was abuzz with excitement as people filed in for the special community event. Banners hung from the rafters, proudly displaying the names Dr. Amelia Davidson and Attorney Samuel Davidson. The air was thick with anticipation and a hint of nervousness. Justin Davidson sat in the front row, his heart swelling with pride. He watched as Amelia and Samuel took their places on the stage, looking every bit the accomplished professionals they had become. Mayor Rodriguez stepped up to the podium, clearing his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we're here today to celebrate two of our own who have brought great honor to our town. Dr. Amelia Davidson and Samuel Davidson have shown us what it means to rise above adversity and make a real difference in people's lives." As the mayor continued his speech, Justin noticed a few familiar faces in the crowd. These were the same people who had once crossed the street to avoid him and his children. Now, they sat with heads bowed, a mix of shame and admiration on their faces. After Amelia and Samuel had each said a few words, Mayor Rodriguez called Justin to the stage. "And now, we'd like to honor the man who made all this possible, Justin Davidson." Justin walked up, his steps slow and deliberate. He stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces he'd known for decades. Suddenly, Mr. Wilkins stood up. "Justin," he said, his voice shaky, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong to judge you for adopting Amelia and Samuel. I see now what a wonderful father you've been, and I'm deeply sorry for how I treated you and your family." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Then Mrs. Larson stood up. "I'm sorry too, Justin. I was so caught up in my own prejudices that I couldn't see the love in your family. I regret my behavior deeply." One by one, more townspeople stood up, offering heartfelt apologies. Tears streamed down faces as years of misunderstanding and prejudice began to crumble away. Justin stood at the podium, overwhelmed by the outpouring of remorse and newfound respect. He looked at Amelia and Samuel, seeing in their eyes the same mix of emotions he felt: surprise, gratitude, and a profound sense of healing. Justin took a deep breath, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. He looked out at the crowd, his gaze filled with warmth and understanding. "Thank you all for your kind words," he began, his voice soft but steady. "I want you to know that I never held a grudge against any of you." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Many had expected anger or resentment, but Justin's words were filled with compassion. "You see," Justin continued, "when I adopted Amelia and Samuel, I made a promise to myself and to them. I promised to raise them with love, kindness, and understanding. And part of that meant teaching them to see the good in people, even those who might hurt them." He paused, looking over at his children. Amelia and Samuel sat on the stage, their eyes brimming with pride and love for their father. "Forgiveness isn't always easy," Justin said, turning back to the crowd. "But it's the path to healing. It's what allows us to move forward, to grow, and to build a better community together." Justin's words hung in the air, touching the hearts of everyone present. Many in the audience wiped away tears, nodding in agreement. "I raised Amelia and Samuel to understand that people sometimes fear what they don't understand," Justin explained. "But I also taught them that love and kindness can bridge any gap. That's why they've become the compassionate, successful adults you see before you today." He gestured towards his children, his face beaming with pride. "They learned to forgive, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And in doing so, they've helped our town grow and change for the better." Justin's words resonated deeply with the townspeople. They saw before them not just a man who had endured their prejudice, but one who had responded with grace and wisdom, raising two remarkable children in the process. As Justin's heartfelt words settled over the crowd, a hush fell upon the gathering. Slowly, people began to stir, their faces etched with a mix of emotions: regret, admiration, and hope. Mrs. Santos, the town librarian, was the first to approach Amelia and Samuel. Her hands trembled as she reached out to them. I'm so sorry," she said, her voice quavering. "I never gave you a chance. I was wrong, and I hope you can forgive me." Amelia smiled warmly, taking Mrs. Santos's hands in her own. "Of course, Mrs. Santos. Thank you for your apology. It means a lot to us." Samuel nodded in agreement, his eyes kind. "We understand, and we hold no ill will towards you or anyone else." Encouraged by Mrs. Santos's bravery, others began to step forward. Mr. Jenkins, the hardware store owner, approached with tears in his eyes. "I was one of the worst," he admitted. "I spread rumors and made your lives difficult. I can't take that back, but I want you to know how sorry I am." Samuel placed a hand on Mr. Jenkins' shoulder. "What matters is that you're here now, acknowledging the past and wanting to do better. That's what counts." As more townspeople came forward, offering heartfelt apologies and sharing stories of how Amelia and Samuel had touched their lives, a palpable sense of healing began to spread through the community. Old grudges melted away, replaced by a newfound respect and understanding. Justin watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling with pride. He saw the fruits of his labor, not just in the successful careers of his children, but in their capacity for forgiveness and their ability to bring about change. Amelia and Samuel stood side by side, greeting each person with genuine warmth and grace. They embodied the lessons Justin had taught them throughout their lives: to meet prejudice with understanding, to combat hate with love, and to always believe in the power of forgiveness. As the days passed, the transformation in the town became more evident. The Davidson family, once ostracized, now found themselves at the heart of the community. Amelia, Samuel, and Justin were no longer just tolerated, they were celebrated. Amelia's medical practice flourished. Patients from all walks of life sought her care, drawn by her compassion and skill. One afternoon, as she finished her rounds at the hospital, she overheard two nurses talking. "Dr. Davidson is amazing," one said. "Remember when folks used to whisper about her? Now they can't stop singing her praises." The other nurse nodded. "It's like night and day. She saved so many lives and she never holds a grudge. I'm proud to work with her." Amelia smiled to herself, touched by their words. She thought of her father and the lessons he'd taught her about forgiveness and perseverance. Meanwhile, Samuel's law firm had become a beacon of hope for those seeking justice. People who once crossed the street to avoid him now lined up outside his office, eager for his help and advice. One day, as Samuel was leaving the courthouse after winning another case, he ran into Mr. Wilkins, the man who had once been one of their harshest critics. "Samuel," Mr. Wilkins said, his voice filled with respect, "I just wanted to say, you're doing great things for this town. We're lucky to have you." Samuel shook his hand warmly. "Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. That means a lot coming from you." Justin, too, found himself embraced by the community. The local school invited him to speak about adoption and acceptance. As he stood before a room full of attentive faces, he felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. "Love knows no color," he told the students. "It only knows the heart. Remember that, and you'll make this world a better place." The town, once a place of whispers and sidelong glances, had become a model of inclusion and respect. The Davidson family's journey had not only changed their lives, but had also transformed an entire community. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the windows of the Davidson home, Justin, Amelia, and Samuel gathered around the dinner table. The aroma of home-cooked food filled the air, a comforting backdrop to their family time. Justin looked at his children, now grown and successful, and felt a swell of pride in his chest. He couldn't help but remember the early days when they faced ridicule and judgment from the town. Now, here they were, respected pillars of the community. "You know," Justin began, his voice soft with emotion, "I was just thinking about how far we've come." Amelia looked up from her plate, her eyes shining. "Dad, we wouldn't be here without you. You gave us everything." Samuel nodded in agreement. "Remember when Mrs. Thompson used to cross the street to avoid us? Now she bakes you a pie every Sunday." They all chuckled at the memory, the laughter a stark contrast to the pain they once felt. "I'm so proud of both of you," Justin said, his voice thick with emotion. "Amelia, the way you care for your patients, even those who once judged us. It's incredible. And Samuel, your dedication to justice, fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. You both amaze me every day." Amelia reached out and squeezed her father's hand. "Dad, you taught us how to be strong, how to forgive. We wouldn't be who we are without your love and guidance." Samuel leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, when I was little, I used to wonder why people looked at us funny. But you always told us to hold our heads high, to be proud of who we are." Justin smiled, remembering those difficult conversations. "I just wanted you both to know that you were loved, no matter what anyone else thought." "And we did," Amelia said softly. "We always knew. Even on the hardest days, we knew we had you in our corner." The three of them sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history settling around them like a warm blanket. "Thank you, Dad," Samuel said finally, "for believing in us when no one else did, for showing us what real strength looks like." Justin felt tears prick at his eyes. "I'm the lucky one," he said. "You two have taught me more about love and courage than I could ever have imagined." The town hall bustled with activity as people from all walks of life gathered for the charity event honoring the Davidson family. Colorful banners hung from the walls, proclaiming messages of unity and equality. The air hummed with excitement and a sense of change. Justin, Amelia, and Samuel stood near the entrance, greeting guests with warm smiles. They were still getting used to the outpouring of support from the community that had once shunned them. "I can't believe this is happening," Amelia whispered to her father, her eyes wide with wonder. Justin squeezed her hand gently. "It's amazing what love and forgiveness can do," he replied, his voice filled with emotion. As they made their way through the crowd, they overheard snippets of conversation. People were discussing plans to support underprivileged families, create scholarships for minority students, and establish community programs to promote understanding and acceptance. Mayor Rodriguez stepped up to the podium, tapping the microphone to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice ringing out clear and strong, "we're here tonight to honor a family that has taught us all a valuable lesson in love, forgiveness, and perseverance." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the Davidsons. Justin felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at the faces of people who had once crossed the street to avoid him and his children. The Davidson family has shown us that true strength lies not in judging others, but in opening our hearts to those who are different from us, Mayor Rodriguez continued. "Tonight, we're not just raising funds. We're making a commitment to be better, to do better for all members of our community." A round of applause filled the room. Samuel blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the moment. He thought about all the times he had fought for justice in the courtroom, never imagining that his own town would one day stand up for what was right. As the evening progressed, Justin, Amelia, and Samuel were approached by countless townspeople, each with their own story of how the Davidson family had inspired them to change. The event raised a substantial amount for various causes, but more importantly, it marked a turning point for the town. As the charity event came to a close, Justin, Amelia, and Samuel stepped out into the cool evening air. The streetlights cast a warm glow on the sidewalks, illuminating their path as they began to walk through the town. Justin held Amelia's hand on his left and Samuel's on his right. As they strolled down Main Street, they noticed the changes that had taken place not just in the hearts of the people, but in the town itself. New businesses owned by diverse families had sprung up, and colorful murals celebrating unity decorated once bare walls. People passing by smiled and waved, some even stopping to chat. Mrs. Johnson, who had once refused to let her children play with Amelia and Samuel, approached them with a warm smile. "I just wanted to thank you all again," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "You've shown us what true strength and grace look like." Justin nodded, his heart full. "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. We're all learning and growing together." As they continued their walk, they passed by the school where Amelia and Samuel had faced their first taste of prejudice. Now, a banner hung over the entrance, proclaiming, "Diversity is our strength." Samuel squeezed his father's hand. "Remember when we used to walk this same path and people would cross the street to avoid us?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder at how much had changed. Justin nodded, his eyes misty with emotion. "I do, son. But look at us now. Look at our town now." Amelia smiled, taking in the sight of families of all backgrounds enjoying the evening together in the park they were passing. "It's like a completely different place," she marveled. As they rounded the corner onto their street, they saw their neighbors out on their porches, waving and calling out greetings. The once hostile stares had been replaced with looks of genuine admiration and respect. Mr. Wilkins, the former critic whose life Amelia had saved, hobbled over with the help of his cane. "There's our town heroes," he said with a warm chuckle. "You Davidsons have sure shown us old folks a thing or two about love and acceptance." Justin smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. "We're all heroes when we choose love over hate, Mr. Wilkins," he replied. As they reached their home, the family paused on the porch, looking out at the street they had walked countless times before. But now, instead of fear and isolation, they felt a sense of belonging and community. If you enjoyed the story of the Davidson family, I handpicked this next story that will touch your heart. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it